What's going on, guys? Hope you all are doing great. In today's video, we'll be working on our Google Map API series, and what we're focusing in this video is we're focusing on the different traveling mode. So what do we want to implement? We want to be able to actually put an origin and also put a destination, and after that, we choose the traveling mode, and we have driving, walking, bicycling, and also transit. When we choose this traveling mode, we should be able to actually get a route from our origin to our destination. And we'll be doing all this with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So what do we need to do before we get started? We will need an API key. I'll leave a card above because I go through how you create an API key and also how you add the libraries. So check out that video if you do not know how to use an API key or how to actually create an API key. Check that video out and then come back to this video when you already have all that information. And what we're going to do in this video, I will show you how to create an API key, but I won't show you the whole process if you've never done this before. So that's why I'm recommending that video, because that video shows it for complete beginners who have never created a Google Map API key. When we create our API key, what we'll do next is we'll actually add the library, which is the direction library, because what we're doing here is we're getting the direction from point A to point B. So we'll add that library to give us that functionality. And after that, it's straight up to coding. So we'll go to our HTML, write out the code we need to do there, go to CSS, just add a little bit of styling. You can see this is not much. It's just some lines of code for the CSS. And finally, the JavaScript. And even the JavaScript, it's nothing too advanced. I'll try my best to explain everything as we go along. But if you have any questions, put it down in the comments below, guys, and I'll for sure answer it. Like the video, guys. It's completely free and it really helps the channel out. It helps other people who are interested in stuff like this to actually find the video. So like the video, subscribe if you're new, because I release content like this very frequently, and I have a lot of videos coming your way. So make sure you subscribe for more fire content. And with all that said, let's get started, guys. So the way to create the Google Map API key is you go to Google Cloud Platform, and you should have an account with them. If you don't have, create an account. It's completely free. Now, when you're in your Google Cloud Platform, you can see it here. It's console.cloud.google.com. Make sure you're here in your dashboard. What we're going to do next is to add the library. We actually first need to create our API key. So you go right here to your credentials, you click on the home or this bar right here. When you click on that, you go to APIs and services. Inside there, you can see we have different options here. What you click on is credentials. Now that we've created a credential, you can see I have different API keys, but I just want to show you how you can create it yourself. You go to create credentials, and you can see here we have API key. So you just click on that, and now we have our API key. We just created an API key. We copy it. Now that we've created our API key, we need to add the libraries to it. If not, the API key is completely useless. So the way we add the library is we go right here, we click on libraries, and the libraries we're going to add first is JavaScript. So I'll just write JavaScript right here. You can see we have JavaScript API. So, okay, it's already enabled. I don't have to do that, but for you, you might need to enable it. Mine just says manage. And the other one we need to add is also direction API. And I think I already enabled it. So you can see direction right here. I already enabled. It says API enabled. So I don't need to, but for yours, it won't be enabled. So you will need to enable it. When you enable it, that's all done, and it's time to actually get to the HTML page. So I'll see you guys in the HTML page where we start coding. Okay guys, now we're in our HTML page. All you need to do in your HTML page is you need to create a doc type. You can easily do that by just doing this. This is shorthand. I have Emmet abbreviation. You can check your extensions right here to install that. So what you need to do is you just do that and you create your own doc type. You see I press enter and I have my own doc type right here. I don't need to create another one. I'm just showing you how to do it. And in your doc type, you need to link your JS file to your HTML file and also link your CSS file to your HTML file. So that's what we did right here. you can see main.js, and our JavaScript file is called main.js. You can also see style.css, which is the name of our CSS file. And what you can see below here is that we have this script, and this script is for our API key. So down in the description below, I'll leave a page where you can get this script so you don't have to write it like this. So all you can do is copy it and paste it to your HTML page. But in this script, we're going to paste our API key right here. So make sure you see where I'm pasting it. It's between the equal sign and the and symbol. So we'll paste it in between that. So let me just get it real quick. Yeah, so right now we're going to paste it. I can see we have our API key right here. And this is all we need to do for now. We'll save it. The next part is to actually put some HTML elements that will actually show our map. So that's what we want to do next is we'll put the HTML elements, and we're starting with a div. And this div is going to have an ID of floating dash panel. And inside here, what we'll have is we'll have a div, another one, and another div inside it. So we have two divs right now. And let me just do it like this. It looks better like this. So we can see the outer div and also the inner one. We'll put our inputs because we had two inputs. It's going to be a text, and we'll give it an ID of from because this is our origin input, and also add a placeholder, and the placeholder is going to say origin. That's basically what we need to do for that. And we can easily just copy these divs like this. We copy it, and then we do the same thing to destination. We do the same thing for destination. So the ID is going to be here too. And this comma right here, there's no need of that. I think that was a typo. And right here, instead of origin, we'll put destination. Just gonna save this. And let's go to live server to actually see what we just created. Yeah, so we created these two inputs, origin and destination. We gave them IDs, and we also showed actually the type, which is the text type of input. Now what we'll do next, we'll use the boldface element, which is the B element. And what we want to do here is just want to write mode of travel. Inside here, we'll have a select element, and we don't need to give it a name. All we need to do is give it an ID, and the ID is going to be mode. Inside this select, we'll have different options, and these options are going to be basically the different modes of transportation we want to use. They will all have different values. So for driving, this is going to be called driving, and we'll make it in all capitals. Driving, and then inside here we'll write driving. I'm just going to copy that and change it. The next one is going to be walking. After that, we have bicycling or cycling, but it's better to put bicycling. And the final one is transit. Okay, now we have our different modes of traveling. And now that we have that, what we need to do next is we just need to create a div that will actually show our map. And this is going to be outside the floating panel. So you can see right here, this is the div. So outside this right here, we'll create the map. Just create a div and we'll give it an ID of, and this is shortcut with emmet. If you put a hash and then you put the name of the ID, in our case, it's called map. It creates a div for you with the name of the ID map. And this is just going to be empty. We're going to put the map dynamically. That means with our JavaScript. But for now, we just need to have it there and go to the CSS next. Okay guys, let me just summarize what we did right here. We created two inputs, origin and destination, and then we created traveling mode. And this traveling mode has a driving, walking, bicycling, and transit. So that's what we did. And after that, we also added our API key. And the API key, you can see right here, it's inside the script tag. So make sure you have all these things I just mentioned. We also created a div for our map, but you can't see that right now because we have to put it dynamically with our JavaScript. So we will do that in the JavaScript section. But what we need to do next, guys, is we need to go to the CSS part and just add a little bit of styling. Nothing too much, nothing too complicated, just so it looks a little bit better than this. And after we're done with that, we'll go straight to our JavaScript. So let's get to the CSS section. Now, the CSS section, the first thing we'll do is for our map ID, we'll set that, we'll give it a height, and the height is going to be 100%. So it's going to take the whole page. What we'll do next, we'll say HTML and body. We'll set a height of 100% too. We'll set the margin to 0 and padding to 0. After that, for our floating panel, I hope you remember the floating panel div we created. And it was an ID. That's why we put in this sign right here, because that's how we reference IDs. We'll give it a position of relative, a top of 10 pixels, a left of 25%. You can see it's moving already. We'll add a z index of 5. Also going to add a border, and the border will give it 1 pixel. It's going to be a solid border, and the color is just going to be 999. For sure, you can choose whatever colors you want. You can see our border is showing now. After that, we'll give it a text align of center, so all the text is in the center. What we do next is we'll add a font family of Roboto. Actually, you can use whatever font. So this is the font we're going to use. Doesn't look bad. Ubuntu or whatever the name it is. As far as it looks nice, choose whatever fonts you want. We'll add also a line height of 30 pixels and a padding left of 10 pixels. Yeah, it shouldn't be relative. The position should be absolute. Exactly. No wonder it was so big. So yeah, you can see the difference now between relative and absolute. But now we can see that we have it. It looks nice. The next part is the JavaScript. Let's make sure our map is working well and we can get the different location or the different traveling modes for different locations. Okay guys, so right now we finished our HTML and CSS. The next part is the JavaScript. Let's get to it. You can see we're at main.js now. You can just cancel this and this too. We don't need them. Okay guys, so the first thing we need to create in our main.js is a function, and this function is going to be called initMap. If you've been doing Google Map API before, you will know that this is a standard. And right here, we'll create a constant direction renderer. and make sure the direction is with an S. So directions render, I will set that to new Google the maps actually, and then we say direction render. We call the function there. So that's what we just did. Make sure that you spelt everything correctly, because a lot of people say, oh, my code is not working out well, and I see they didn't add an S to the constant, or they didn't add an S to the directions render. All these things matter, so make sure everything is exactly the way it should be. I also make that mistake sometimes, so it's just part of coding. Okay, guys, so what I'm just going to do, I'm going to copy this right here. We're going to change some little details here. Instead of directions renderer, we're going to say directions service, and the service is with a capital S. I'm saying new Google Maps, the same thing here too, capital S, service. After that, we'll say constant map is equal to new Google the maps dot map with a capital M. And we'll also use the document dot get element by ID. What element are we getting by ID? The element we're getting is our map. You know, we created a div with map as its ID. That's the element we want to get. Create a comma right here. We create a comma right there. And after the comma, we use this curly brackets. And what we want to do is we want to give it a zoom of 14. You can increase or reduce the zoom depending on what you want. And we'll also add a center. This center can be any location. You can literally put your location, but right here, I'm just going to put this random location here, 37.77. That's for the latitude. Put a comma there, and then we put LNG. That's for longitude. Say -122.447. And yes, guys, that's basically it. What we do next is we'll say this, we'll call this directions render dot set map. And if you don't understand all these things, I'll leave some documentation, guys, where you can research more about this if you don't understand, and also put comments down below if you're struggling with some stuff. So what we're going to do next now is we're going to actually create a function, and we'll call this function calculate and display routes. And here we'll take as its input, we'll take direction service and also direction renderer. And I'm just going to make this big because nothing is going to happen in the JavaScript. No, I just enlarged it because right now we don't need to actually look at the HTML page or the CSS page right now or the web browser. Okay, guys, so let's look at what we did right here. We created a function called calculate and display routes. It took as its input directions service and directions renderer. What we do next inside this function is we'll create a constant and it's called select mode, selected mode. We'll set that equal to document dot get element by ID, and the element we're getting by ID is the mode. I know the mode was in our HTML file. Just check your HTML file. If you've been following along, you see what you set your mode. It's an ID, and it was for the options, for the different options we had, which was driving, transit, walking, and yeah, the other one. cycling, bicycling. Then we put the value to actually get the value. What we do next is we'll say direction service dot routes. So direction service dot routes. We put the curly brackets inside it, and we say origin. And for the origin, we'll say document again. Dot get element by ID. And the element we're getting is from the value. And what we do next, I just copied it and I'll change the origin to destination. And right here, we're going to get to instead of from. And make sure you put the comma right here. If not, you get an error. Put the comma here again. Okay, now that we've actually gotten our from and to, and I will just show you this in the HTML file so you can see we have an ID to and we have an ID from. We also had the ID mode, which is from our select that has the different modes of traveling, which is driving, walking, cycling, and transit. And we have the ID map. So you can see that we've used all this in the JavaScript, and we've used it by calling it with our get element by ID. And we used it by calling it with our documents.get element by ID. And then we put the ID of each of these elements. So hopefully you understand that part. What we're going to do next is we're going to say traveling mode or travel mode. And then we'll say Google the maps the travel with a capital travel mode, and then use these square brackets and we say selected mode. And why we're doing this is that JavaScript allows us to access the constant using a square bracket and a string as its value, which is basically the property. So that's why we're using it like this. After this, we'll use the dot then and put two curly brackets. We put two brackets inside. We'll say response, and we add the arrow. And we add our arrow right here. Put the curly brackets, and we say direction render dot set direction, set directions, and then we put response inside here. After this, we need to catch it because when you use then, you also need to catch. If it doesn't work out, we'll create an event that will actually call the window dot alert that will alert us that okay, this direction request has failed. And then we'll use the status to actually get why it failed. Okay, so now we've created this function, we need to use it because we know that if you create a function without using it, it's completely useless. So how do we use this function? We need to call it. And where we're going to call it is we go up to this part right here, and we'll say calculate and display routes. Inside here, we'll put direction service and also direction renderer. After that, we'll say document dot get element by ID. And what we're getting is mode. Then we say dot add event listener. And we're using change here. So if we change it, if the mode changes, then we're going to call this function. The function we're calling is calculate and display routes, and we'll give it its input, which is direction service and also direction renderer. So yes, guys, that's practically it. Okay, right here, I spelled center wrong. Okay, this direction renderer should be capital, should be a capital D. So directions renderer, and this map right here should be capital. This is the problem with autocorrect. Sometimes it just does stuff that you didn't plan for. Right now, it should actually be working now. So make sure you change the map to a capital here. Make sure this directions renderer is a capital D and also a capital R here. And the same for direction service. And this, I'm going to change it to 2.2, not 3.3. So we have the direction service and then we have dot root. So I think it's better like this. Now we'll go to our map, click on enter. What you can change also is this is transparent. I think it would look better if it wasn't transparent, but let's put London and we put Manchester and we put transit. Now you can see that we get the way from going to point A, which is London to Manchester. And we get this Avanti West Coast. This is, I think, a train service. So you can go from train from London to Manchester using this Avanti West Coast. And this is legit. You can literally do this. It works for different locations. So that's what we wanted to do here. What we basically did is that we used Google Map API key, we used the direction library and also the JavaScript library because we use JavaScript for the programming, and we use the direction library to actually get the direction from our location, which is our origin to our destination. And we did all this with JavaScript. Hopefully you enjoyed it and make sure your code is working out the way ours is working. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments below. Like the video, guys. Subscribe if you're new, but I'm going to wrap this up and I'll see you all on the next one.